Right, in this unit we are going to be doing some quite complex database design, but I thought that to ease ourselves into it, I thought what we'd do is do a simple normalization of the existing primary table, namely the table which contains all the content. If by doing this you'll be able to see basically what is involved in normalizing a database and creating related tables. Okay, so what you can see here, this is the table of the papers. It's got the author, the title, the week, the abstract, the intro, and the hyperlink field. Now, this week table, column, is something which would have a lot of repeating data, which might be better to actually put into another table. At the moment, it says week 3, week 3, week 4, week 4. But what would be better would be that it would reference a record saying week 3 in the weeks table, and whereas it's 4 it would reference a record in the weeks table, since that way we have fewer elements of repeated data. Okay, so the first thing in order to do that, first of all we need to create this other table. Okay, so let's go into Access, click on the Create tag and choose Table. Okay, when you first open a new table like this, Access gives you this sort of look. I mean, personally I don't like that. I much prefer to go into the design view. So if you click on design view, then it prompts you to actually save the name of the table. So I'm going to call it weeks. Click OK, and then now I've got a much easier place to do all the designing. Okay, now in this table we could have well, certainly we'd need the number of the week, so we could have something like, I'll just type in the word week here, and that would be a number field, because it's going to be a number between 3 and 10, which is kind of, if you like, represents the weeks where seminars take place on the mobile standards course. Okay, so that would be a week number. If we wanted to, we might even add an extra field, like for example topic, because now we've made this structure of the database a little more rich. We can add extra fields in here which won't require kind of endless kind of repeating of information, because you'd only type it in once, but then it would be referenced multiple times by the papers in the papers table. So other things we could do, for example, is adding the week starts on which day, so maybe it's Monday the 5th or Monday the 12th, Monday the 19th, something like that. That could another feature we could add. But anyway, let's just leave it with these for now. Okay. Now, so having done that, then what we can know, if we go back into the papers table, we look at this. What we want to do is we want to change this number here from, instead of actually representing the week, it needs to represent what it needs to link to one of the records in the weeks table. So while we're at it, let's kick it onto the weeks tables, click on it, save it, and let's add in some data. So we know we're going to say there's week 3, and topic we can say ubiquitous computing, and week, then I'll choose then week 4, let's call that something, for example devices or something like that. Okay, so we've got now 2 records in that table. Okay, but what we know to do now is the papers table needs to link. So instead of saying number 3, it needs to link to that record in the weeks table, which is related to week 3. Okay. Now then, what we need to do therefore is slightly redefine our database. Okay. And Access has got a very nice little feature which allows you to do this, and that is basically something called a lookup wizard. So let me just close down these tables right now. Okay, and now let's right click on the papers table and click design view. Now then, here where it says week is number, okay, what we're going to do now is change that into something called a lookup wizard. Okay, now a lookup wizard means that you are then given the ability to choose from a set of values in another table. Okay, so it says I want the lookup column to look up values in a table or query. Okay, so now I go forward, so it's going to be from table weeks, correct? Okay, and what it's going to show there is we want it to actually show the week. Okay, now this is a little bit tricky, so I didn't explain that. What we will see in the table is the week, but actually what will be stored in the table is this one, the ID. The ID of the record in the weeks table to which the reference from the weeks column in the papers table is making. So let's click then next. Okay, I'm sort of like ascending, whatever, that leave that. Okay, so that's what we'll see so far, because we've only got two weeks in this table, so we'll only see a 3 and a 4, and we'll call this lookup column week. Okay, so save now. Okay, and now then, what we'll have, okay, so anytime we want to add a new record in there, is we'll be given, instead of typing in a number, any number, we'll be typing in from the list of possible numbers that are in the weeks table. So now if I go back into the weeks table, let me just add some more data, like week 5 is going to be multimodality, and week 6 is going to be security, for example. Okay, just this is not the true, but it will do for now. Okay, so now I've got those extra values in there. Now then, let me go back into, so this is, let's come out of the weeks table, and now let's close down the papers, because we're in design view at the moment, and then double click on papers again. Okay, and now we are, now as you see, what we've got, instead of we have the let me just explain. So what we have now is a link to the other table. So I can now choose, I'm going to have week 3 for the first one, week 3, week 4, and week 4. Okay, so that's done there. So that's that. Now it says 3344, but that's actually not what's really being stored in that table. If I now click on, I'll just show you now, if I right click on the papers table and choose export, for example, suppose I want to export all the data in this file into a text file, okay, and I click OK. Okay, what it should do now is give me some a sort of, what am I saying? Sort of like what will be the typical text output? Okay, so it's basically done by choose the delimiter that separates your fields. Oh, I didn't show it very well, but you see, there's the first. If you look in there, notice where it says number 1. That is the first field, which is the ID. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Expect that. Then we get the authors. Then we get the title, and then we get the week. Okay, so this 4th comma here is where we get in the week. Now it says here 1, 1, and then it says 2, and we'll have to scroll a bit because the title's quite long on this one. 2. Okay, but if we look in the table, it says 3344, and the reason is because what's really being stored here is 1, and which referring to record number 1 of the weeks table, which is week 3. Okay, so and record number 2 is week 4. So whenever in reality, although we see the number 3 here because we've used a lookup wizard, in reality what the table is actually storing in that particular column is not the number 3, it is the number 1, because it's referring to the first record in the weeks table. Okay, another way we can visualize that and have a look at it is if we go to the database tools page and click on the relationships. Okay, now here you'll see what the lookup wizard has done. It has created a relationship between the week field of the papers table and the ID field of the weeks table. Okay, and so therefore, without kind of like explicitly establishing these relationships ourselves, what we have done is we have created a relational database whereby the repeating data regarding the week is actually being separated and put into a separate table. The value of this means A, that data is not being duplicated, but also B, it sort of modularizes the data in such a way that then we can add much more further descriptive data, for example, about the week, the topic, the day of the week it starts on, etc., etc. So that then it becomes a much more flexible thing that we can add to and take away, and it also becomes a much more readable thing, our database. Okay, so that is essentially what we've done. That's the easiest way you can do in Access to essentially change the database, essentially normalize it, turning repeated data into linked tables. Okay, but having done that, of course, then that means we're going to have to rewrite a lot of the code in order for people to be able to input the week when they're uploading a particular paper, and secondly, how you're going to be displaying the week in the list of papers. So that's all going to require a bit of a rewrite, and that's what we're going to do next.